Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Free Alex Saab, US-Canada Hands-Off Venezuela webinar. Bienvenido, bienvenida, todo y toda. Estamos aquí para nuestra acción Free Alex Saab, manos fuera de Venezuela. Estamos unidos a gritar para fin a las sanciones contra Cuba y para libertad para Alex Saab. We have interpretation available at tonight's webinar. The system will be turned on shortly. Once it is turned on, at the bottom of your screen, you will find a globe icon. If you click the globe icon, you'll be able to choose whether to listen to this webinar in English or in Spanish. And if you hit the button mute original audio, it will be much clearer to understand. Thank you in advance to our interpreters for tonight, Ana and Julieta. Vamos a comenzar con nuestro programa y sistema de interpretación. Si quieres participar en español o inglés, puedes. Y hay una icon en algunos segundos que va a estar en tu computadora o teléfono. Es como un mundo, un globo. Si dicen interpretación, pueden hacer un clic y es posible escuchar en inglés o español. Y si puede, hay una opción, se dicen silenciar audio original, y esta es una opción mejor. Vamos a comenzar con interpretación en este momento. Y bienvenidos. Welcome. The interpretation system is now turned on. I'll give everyone a second in order to enter whether you are participating in English or Spanish. Welcome to the 18th consecutive monthly picket action, US-Canada Hands-Off Venezuela, End Sanctions on Venezuela, Free Alex Saab. My name is Allison Bodine. I am the coordinator of the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice, Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and author of Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela from Battle of Ideas Press. Today, we have an excellent lineup of speakers from Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Venezuela who have joined us here today to give an update from the ground about the situation in Venezuela being imposed on the people of Venezuela by governments such as the United States, Canada, and England. At this month's action, we will, as usual, join together at the end in order to take a group photo and express together our demands to end all sanctions on Venezuela and free Alex Saab, a prisoner held in US jails who is a Venezuelan diplomat. On July 29th, judicial authorities in England issued yet another ruling that prevents the rightful return of nearly $2 billion in gold held in the Bank of England to Venezuela. This is a theft of Venezuela's resources and a continued injustice that is only one component of the brutal sanctions and attacks on the people of Venezuela carried out by the government of the United States and their allies, including England and Canada. Despite these attacks, the people of Venezuela have continued to fight back and defend their right to sovereignty and self-determination. And this includes, in recent cases, of Alex Saab, a Venezuelan diplomat currently held in US jails for his work to alleviate the pain caused by US sanctions on the people of Venezuela. This includes the theft of a Venezuelan airliner in Argentina, which we will talk about more later. But in the face of this all, we also have the incredible example of Venezuela's response to the diesel tank fire in Cuba, where Venezuela sent much needed aid and technical expertise to help put out the fire. So I look forward today to hearing updates from the ground in Venezuela. I encourage everyone attending to post in the chat about where you're attending from and how you are joining us here today. And I thank everyone for their time and participation. Today, I will also say that there happens to be some struggles with internet in Venezuela. So a number of our speakers might have troubles connecting, including LILIAM, who's going to be our first speaker. But LILIAM, really great to have you here with us. LILIAM MENDEZ is a member of the Free Alex Saab movement in Venezuela in the state of Apure. And it is really great to have you here today and have the support of the Free Alex Saab movement, which is constantly supporting and mobilizing in Venezuela freedom for Alex Saab. So please begin your presentation, LILIAM. Welcome.
Buenas noches, Alison. Agradecida por la oportunidad y
for the opportunity to be here. And we are extremely happy today, even though our diplomat has been already 797 days imprisoned outside of Venezuela for having pursued activities that allowed us to continue spreading the voice of Venezuela, to continue spreading the truth of Venezuela in the whole world and truth of what's happening in the case of our diplomat. Today has been a big day for us due to the participation in the caravan that began from Petare to the Calvario. That's quite a large sector of Caracas, cutting across the Venezuelan capital. There has been a lot of support here from the population. I wanted to also take the opportunity to share with you a few of the sectors of Venezuela so that you can get to know more about this movement that continues growing in this call that we do, the people from Venezuela. We call on everyone to raise their awareness regarding what's happening, that we can all know more about the cause of Alex Saab, cause that mobilizes us. This doesn't have to do only with what's happening to him, because this is a consequence of the unilateral coercive measures, this huge pressure that the United States government has been pushing on Venezuela. And we, as good Venezuelan people, we will not allow this to happen. They have not been able to conquer us yet. We continue on in the struggle to make the rights of, to defend the rights of the Venezuelan people, to defend sovereignty and truth. There are several things that I wanted to share here today. because it's essential that we all reflect on the status of the case of our diplomat, Alex Saab, things that have taken place in the world and have had an impact, even though certain countries or certain governments have refused to acknowledge this. First of all, there is the executive order from Joe Biden, which he signed a few days ago. This has so far been the alternative or the most likely possibility that people imprisoned abroad have to go back home. Here, we're not going to be talking about whether they're guilty or innocent, if they committed a crime or not, because the world knows what's happening. The world knows each one of the cases of the people involved and why the situation is as it is. So yes, these are different situations to those of Alex Saab. In the case of Alex Saab, it has been proven that he hasn't committed any crime. We cannot call a crime the fact that someone made a trip to purchase food that would feed not one or two families, but rather millions of Venezuelans. We're talking here about the CLAP program, which is a flagship program of the Venezuelan government to confront the huge crisis that we have, a crisis that is a product of the blockade. Alex Saab took a great risk, a great personal risk, and he did so for the well-being of the people of Venezuela. So, going back to this executive order, this is an option for the people. These are US nationals that are imprisoned abroad. We received then a call from some relatives who see this path as quite a likely option, not only for Venezuela, but also for those who are in other parts of the world, for them to be able to go back home. The response from the movement, from us in Venezuela, is that the Venezuelan government, the government of President Nicolás Maduro, has always been open to dialogue, open to find some kind of way in negotiation in benefit of Venezuelan people and in benefit as well of these people. This is nothing but a product of the persecution of Donald Trump. He, when he was in office, was one of the people involved in this persecution. And the same can be said with the declaration of Obama, claiming that Venezuela was a threat to US security and other countries. Nowadays, these sanctions aren't issued only by the United States, but rather its Latin countries have also adopted measures against Venezuela, measures that we have fought against, of course, but they've caused quite a lot of damage. And what good have they done? They have made the Venezuelan people suffer. And whether those in the opposition or in the government, whether they agree or not, this is the effect. And this has actually caused that people have also sympathized with the case of Alex Saab. And they sympathize with him because they realize that this businessman, this diplomat, mobilized through the world trying to ensure what we, the people of Venezuela, needed. That was food, medicine, fuel, equipment. There have been a lot of denounces, and we already know what the background here is. The background here is that they want to work in defense of imperialism. No demand or investigation has bared any fruit, because the innocence of this diplomat, of this businessman, is what becomes evident at every step. We have quite a few proofs that of the fact that the US had knowledge of the diplomatic status of Alex Saab. We know from John Bolton's books and Max Spert's books that they had already been looking into him and trying to see what he was doing to evade the sanctions. They knew it was not possible for them to sanction companies or people and to stop the government to purchase food and to avoid the people from taking a stand against the government of President Maduro. For them, it was easy to locate who was Alex Saab. He was the most visible person supporting Venezuela through the CLAP program. Without a doubt, they focused on Alex Saab, and that's when it all began, the persecution, defamation, and lies. For them, the tactic was to detect who were the leaders or the allies with whom Alex Saab would be trying to acquire the inputs Venezuela needed. And Keep Green was the way towards them achieving their goal. And the government here was also an ally in this vile gameplay that's harmed us all, because the things would be very different if he hadn't been kidnapped and sequestered.
Undoubtedly, this situation is increasingly threatening to us because they want to continue damaging the image of the government of Venezuela and the image of our diplomat, Alex Saab. But we have managed to, ever since 2 years ago, ever since he was kidnapped, we managed to debunk and clarify the situation and telling the truth. So many times we have managed to arrive at the truth with the information that we have been able to spread, and this has allowed them to investigate and clarify the facts. So much so that in several parts of the world, in the 4 continents, there are movements, individuals that have joined our cause, our struggle, so that the truth is known about Venezuela, so that the kidnapping of our diplomat Alex Saab is condemned around the world. So let me go back and tell you something. The family members of the prisoners, United States prisoners in Venezuela here, are the ones who are concerned about their uncertain destiny, because they know, they see that President Biden is continuing sanctioning Venezuela. So they understand that the only way in which their next of kin or the relatives will be able to go back to their country is through an agreement, an exchange, a political agreement, because the situation that we live in the case of Alex Saab and in the case of these other people is a political situation, and the solution is a political solution. In the case of Alex, we see that there are no legal grounds, because even when the United States is leading a judicial process that is completely illegal and that is based on on an investigation in a single crime that is being charged on him, which is conspiracy for money laundering. So the investigation of their diplomatic status leads us to see very clearly that this is completely illogical, because Alex Saab has been a diplomat ever since 2018, and this has been proven. Everyone in the world knows about this because we were witnesses of the arrival of food and medicine in Venezuela and the arrival of gas. This was very clear when we saw Iranian ships coming to Venezuelan shores. So the trial, which is supposedly legal, is completely illogical, because at this moment in time, there has not been any evidence of any crimes being committed. So the charges that are being put on him, conspiracy for money laundering, is completely unreasonable, completely illogical. If there had been any evidence, the evidence would have come to the surface. So this is why we are seeing that the time is up, and this is the moment in which the United States Attorney General's office must present all the evidence that they have as regards Alex Nain Saab Moran. Any document that they have before his illegal kidnapping, documents that they have gathered during his kidnapping, and they must present these documents. They must present all information that they have on Alex Saab. And we are completely sure that they have that information already, because otherwise they wouldn't have filed an appeal so that the judge would appoint an official to guard those evidence, those documents. I'm not going to name any of, I wouldn't appoint any official if I wouldn't know that they would be necessary, that I wouldn't need them. The Venezuelan government had already appointed diplomat Alex Saab on April the 9th in 2018. So that was more than enough for both the government of Venezuela and the government of Iran, which are the two parties, the two stakeholders, to see what's the relationship, the diplomat relationship between these two nations. Another thing that I wanted to highlight has to do with this campaign. Several people have been asking me questions about this. The feeling of the people is a very singular feeling. I live in a state, in the Apure state, which is a border state with Colombia. It's quite far away from the capital of the country. So due to health conditions, I was quite isolated. I am a university teacher, and I was almost 4 years in bed. So my only way to be connected to the world was the social media. In March 2021, I was seeing social media, and there was a wave of information quite a huge wave on the case of Alex Saab coming. So the coordinator of the Free Alex Saab campaign here in Venezuela, Roy, was writing and was showing the situation that Alex Saab was going through as of why he was undergoing all of this. So I sent a message to Roy and I told him, this is extremely serious and so not enough people know about this, especially in my town. This really caught my eye. And I am actually aware of the clap boxes situation and the benefits that it brings to the population. So I told Roy, I am available for whatever you need. Tell Camila and tell the other comrades that are working with you that they can count on me. From my small window to the world, I will be there to help you. So, because I did this, my Twitter accounts, free Twitter accounts, and Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts were shut down. But it doesn't matter. We continue spreading the truth of Venezuela, the truth of Alex Saab. And truly, this has been really satisfactory to me because I've been in contact with people from all around Venezuela, from all states of my country. I've been in contact with groups and movements that work on human rights. I've been in contact with political parties, both at a national level and international levels. I have friends all over the world, in Cuba, in Nicaragua, in Honduras, in Argentina, in the United States as well. I have friends in Spain, in Italy. So many of them have been joining the cause, and they are right now part of the Free Alex Saab movement in defense of Venezuela. And the truth, here we are a beautiful, large, solidary people, a very brave country, as our diplomat is. He's a man with a huge heart, a person that risked and is still risking his life for Venezuelans, because he has been offered castles, really large extents of land or amnesty for him to betray Venezuela, or to say how Venezuela is avoiding the blockade, and he has been constantly loyal to the government of Venezuela and to the Venezuelan people. So really, I am very happy to continue working on this issue, to continue struggling to spread out the truth about Venezuela. And I'm here to make a call to all of you to help us to spread out the truth about Venezuela all over the world, the truth about our diplomats, so that everyone can understand that this is not a legal case. This is a political case, and the solution must be political as well. So the family members of the Americans that are outside of the United States must know that this is the truth. This case is a political case, and the solution must be political, and the case of their family members has come to be a political case, and the one that must make a compromise here is the Biden administration. And they must respect the government of Maduro, because he was the one that was voted into office by the Venezuelan people, and he is the one that we defend. So any questions that you may have, I'm here to answer them. And thank God we have not have any problems, any electricity shortages or internet shortages. So thank you. I don't know, Alison, if you're hearing me.
Hola.
Yes, Lilian, thank you so much for a powerful presentation that you've given us today all the way from Apure. I think it's really incredible to hear from you and your story of how you came to support Alex Saab, to work for his freedom. Really, our campaign from the US or Canada is only possible because people in the Venezuela, you are working in Venezuela, are working every day to bring Alex Saab home. And I think that we are very much honored to be able to work beside you at these monthly pickets every month. We've heard from such a wide range of speakers from Venezuela about why they support Alex Saab, why they defend their country's sovereignty and self-determination. And I really appreciate your time this evening to join with us and to let us know your experience and to share with us your determination as well that Alex Saab will be free. It's very much, as you said, exactly right, a very political case, and it is up to working people in the US and Canada and Venezuela solidarity organizers, many who have gathered here on this call today, to work harder for his freedom and to convince people in the United States, especially, that Alex Saab, a Venezuelan diplomat, should not spend one more day, one more hour, one more minute in US jails for his work to free or for his work to help alleviate the impact of US sanctions on Venezuelan people. So thank you, Lilian. Free Alex Saab, we are with you. And go ahead.
Claro que sí. Desde el corazón, pues todo nuestro apoyo para la causa.
From our heart, all of our support to the cause and all of our support to continue spreading this information, spreading the truth about Venezuela and our diplomat. And for all of you to know that this is a political case. This is political persecution for having aided the Venezuelan government and the Venezuelan people. Greeting.
Thank you again. So for now, we will go on to our next, we're going to go to a video before our next speaker. The video is produced by Venezuela Analysis. It is a video about the impact of US sanctions on Venezuela. And then we'll have our speaker, BHAGWANT SANDHU, who is joining us from here in Canada. Thank you again, Lilian. And I'm going to cue up the video now.
So what is the deal with sanctions? The Maduro government brings up sanctions all the time. The US government threatens to impose more sanctions. Low-life self-proclaimed Juan Guaido calls for more sanctions. Even Venezuela Analysis is doing infographics about sanctions. What is all the fuss about? Here's the ultimate guide on sanctions against Venezuela. 1. What are sanctions? The US cycled through plenty of options to try and oust the Bolivarian Revolution before settling on a weapon of choice: economic sanctions, or unilateral coercive measures, if we want to be more accurate. How do they work? The US Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, simply emits orders to blacklist given individuals or companies. Any assets owned by these actors under US jurisdiction are blocked, while US persons and enterprises are banned from dealing with targeted entities. These are known as primary sanctions. Let's look at some examples. In January of 2019, Washington sanctioned Venezuela state oil company PDVSA, effectively imposing an oil embargo. Overnight, Caracas was blocked from shipping crude to the US, which meant losing some $11 billion a year in revenues in one fell swoop. Venezuela also lost Citgo, the $8 billion worth subsidiary, which was seized and later placed under Guaido's control. Months later, the Trump administration blacklisted 13 companies and 10 individuals for their alleged involvement in an intricate network to import food for Venezuela's subsidized CLAP program. When we say that sanctions mean to starve the Venezuelan people, it's not a metaphor. 2. An ever tighter blockade. An August 2019 executive order imposed a Cuba-style embargo, targeting all Venezuelan state entities. But more importantly, it paved the way for so-called secondary sanctions, giving the U.S. Treasury Department a self-proclaimed authority to even go after non-U.S. third parties. Starting in early 2020, the U.S. Treasury Department began targeting foreign companies for the crime of trading with the Venezuelan state. The final clampdown came later that year, as the Trump administration started threatening enterprises that engaged in swap deals, for example, exchanging crude for fuel or food. All in all, there have been dozens of such measures, targeting everything from the Venezuelan central bank to ship captains. The cruelty and absurdity of the U.S. economic aggression was embarrassingly exposed when a restaurant in Italy was sanctioned because its owner had the same name as someone allegedly involved in the Venezuelan oil trade. 3. Overcompliance. While on the surface, sanctions are punitive measures penalizing given companies or individuals, their goals are much broader. The purpose is to make Venezuela and its state entities toxic for business. For instance, after the 2019 oil embargo, Venezuela looked to India as a prime trade partner. It made sense for both sides and could have allowed the Caribbean nation to exchange crude for medicines or fuel. But Washington was quick to warn Indian companies that there would be consequences, and large-scale firms are not willing to put their global operations in jeopardy for dealing with Venezuela. In most cases, these threats don't even need to be made explicit. As a result, Caracas is left isolated, or sees the cost of doing business grow and grow. U.S. spokespeople always read a script that says that there are humanitarian exemptions to allow for operations like food or medicine imports. However, even anti-government NGOs admit that these are as good as nothing because of a phenomenon called overcompliance. Simply put, actors are not willing to get anywhere near Venezuela-related activities for fear of trouble down the road. The typical situation has been financial institutions refusing to work as intermediaries. In one infamous recent case, a Swiss bank blocked payments to the United Nations COVAX program, which meant months of delays before COVID-19 vaccines could arrive. 4. The impact of sanctions. The consequences of the U.S. blockade have been nothing short of devastating. Beyond depriving the country of foreign income, stripping it of foreign assets, forcing it to default on debts, it's the impact on the Venezuelan people that should be stressed. Declined or blocked imports have forced people to face either scarce or overpriced food and medicine. Hundreds of thousands of chronic patients have no treatment. Previously eradicated diseases made a comeback due to missing or delayed vaccination programs. Fuel shortages have paralyzed transport and electricity generation, but most importantly, imperil agriculture, from tractors that cannot run to crops that cannot be transported. And a deteriorated infrastructure has brought water, electricity, and cooking gas shortages, meaning there is virtually no aspect of Venezuelan day-to-day life unaffected by the sanctions. There are all too many stories of hospitals missing equipment, people who die because ambulances have no fuel, not to mention a huge wave of migration that has destroyed families and deprived the country of qualified personnel. Venezuela was already facing a crisis, but US-led sanctions were akin to dropping firebombs on the Venezuelan economy and blocking the exits. Conservative estimates state that over 100,000 people have died as a consequence of sanctions by the US and allies. Over 30% of the population is reportedly undernourished. When people say that sanctions kill, it's not an exaggeration. 5. The corporate media coverage. Given the unilateral and illegal nature of the sanctions, and especially their terrible effects, it would be fair to expect universal condemnation, right? Well, not quite. The Venezuelan government, popular movements, even opposition sectors that don't take orders from Washington, have loudly condemned sanctions. Multilateral organizations and actors, from the U.S. Human Rights Council to special rapporteurs, have detailed the measure's impact and demanded their immediate lifting. Inside U.S. borders, solidarity organizations and progressive think tanks have worked tirelessly to hold their representatives accountable. As a result, there are now plenty of Democratic House members demanding that the Biden administration reverse its predecessor's policies. Even the freaking US Chamber of Commerce is questioning sanctions. So why is there no unanimous rejection of these murderous actions? Because of the corporate media. Stenographers with next to no inclination to speak truth to power have gone out of their way to endorse regime change against Venezuela, even if it means lying about sanctions or downplaying their implications. Using debunked arguments such as supposed electoral fraud, Western outlets will do anything to justify sanctions and pretend they have nothing to do with Venezuela's economic crisis. And worse, they will use euphemisms like, sanctions were designed to deprive Maduro of resources. And so a policy that has killed tens of thousands of Venezuelans is portrayed as depriving an ill-behaved child of their allowance. Another favorite is the Maduro says trick. While sanctions have been widely condemned and their effects exposed, even in Washington, D.C., corporate journalists will often write that Maduro blames sanctions for the economic downturn, or something similar, thus taking advantage of all the previous work demonizing him. Despite causing untold suffering, U.S. regime change efforts in Venezuela have failed, but it's clear that these measures are not going away anytime soon. After all, there are huge oil reserves at play, and more importantly, the need to punish any and all who dare to challenge U.S. hegemony. Sanctions will not be lifted because Western leaders will listen to their hearts or decide to respect international law. The end of the sanctions will come as a result of struggle and pressure. Here, in Venezuela, the people's resistance has been nothing short of heroic. The Venezuelan pueblo deserves all the solidarity in the world.
Thank you, everyone, for that video. Thank you to Venezuela Analysis for producing the video. We will put the link in the chat to the YouTube and encourage people to share it with their supporters and friends on social media. So I think it offers some important insight into the impact of US sanctions, and that is exactly what Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab was fighting to alleviate. That is why he was procuring food, medicine contracts for Venezuelan food boxes known as the CLAP program. And we have to recognize that is also the reason why he has been imprisoned in the United States. So next, I want to invite up someone who is I've gotten to know only in the time of pandemic, unfortunately. But we've worked together on a few projects related to Canada's foreign policy, specifically Venezuela and Cuba. It's been good getting to know each other so far, and I look forward to meeting in person one day. BHAGWANT SANDHU is a retired Director General with the federal government in Canada, who has also held executive positions in the British Columbia and Ontario provincial governments. BHAGWANT is also a writer and an analyst with a keen interest in Canada's contemporary foreign policy, and will be speaking to us today about Canada's role in the sanctions and attacks against Venezuela. Welcome, BHAGWANT.
Thank you very much, Allison. You can hear me clear? Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Je commence en disant bonjour, bonsoir à tous les amis, les camarades ici au Canada et partout dans le monde. I am this evening speaking to you from Ottawa, which is on the traditional and unceded lands and territories of the Anishinaabe people. To start off tonight, I was asked by Allison to give some thought to two topics. First, why our government in Canada is showing such hostility and belligerence against Venezuela, and then why must we continue to protest against its actions, that is our government's actions. This is very much in line with the video that you just saw. I'm pleasantly surprised by that. The fact is that the Trudeau liberals want a regime change in Venezuela, and they're openly sabotaging the legitimacy of its president, Nicolas Maduro. They have actually been very upfront about it, and they're using economic sanctions to achieve that geopolitical objective. Regime change wishes, as we know, run counter to international law, and sanctions must be first approved by the UN Security Council. This has never been done by Canada. Our government, therefore, is acting illegally. But that's only half the story. What our Prime Minister is doing is actually a lot more nefarious and underhanded. He is using domestic law, the Special Economic Measures Act, to circumvent international rules. The act allows for sanctions if there is a grave breach of international peace and security, or if an association of which Canada is a member calls for them. The government has provided no proof that Venezuela is causing any breaches of international peace or security. We have yet to see the evidence. Chrystia Freeland, who is our Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was our Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2017, simply tabled a cabinet decision. It's called an order in council. There was no debate in parliament, no questioning, nothing. It just happened because Chrystia Freeland and Prime Minister Trudeau thought that's the thing to do. I would like to remind you that this is the same Chrystia Freeland who relentlessly championed the Lima Group, which was also obsessed with regime changes. She's now the Deputy Prime Minister, and it appears to be working nonstop to reshape Canada's foreign policy by aligning it tightly with the United States. We can see it in Ukraine, in Africa, and obviously in Venezuela. The grand goal, we can safely conclude, is to reclaim the US hegemony, which has been steadily losing ground, economic ground, and political influence to China, Russia, and I would say even India and Iran, South Africa, etc. We are entering a world which is multipolar. The US hegemony of the unipolar world, the post-Soviet era, is over, but they don't want to accept it necessarily. The second scenario in which sanctions can be used is if an association of which Canada is a member calls for them. Well, we know that the US has called for them, the Lima Group has called for them, NATO has called for them, and as a junior partner to the US, now Canada has called for them. If you examine the pattern of Canadian sanctions, it becomes very obvious. We have Libya in 2011, Syria in 2014, Ukraine in 2014, Nicaragua in 2019, Belarus in 2020, Iran, Venezuela, Zimbabwe. All the countries where the Western alliance is not getting its way. Ukraine in 2014 was to facilitate the coup d'etat against the duly elected president, Viktor Yanukovych. That gives you a bit of a background on the tools and the techniques that have been used to actually, at the end of the day, achieve what they really want to do, which is a regime change in Venezuela. So why should we protest these sanctions as Canadians? I mean, we should protest them internationally, but specifically as Canadians. Well, we know that they're illegal, but there is also a moral argument of interfering in someone else's domestic affairs just because we don't like them for whatever reason. Political accountability matters. We do not live in a dictatorship. The unsavory twisting of Canadian laws to achieve ideological ends defies all the principles of a healthy democracy. If our government can sanction individuals in Venezuela today, it can certainly sanction Canadian citizens tomorrow. I can actually give you evidence of where that's actually happening. So therefore, it is our civic and democratic, I'd even say patriotic duty to keep our government in check. Good news is that, like all arrogant and misguided ideas, Canada's fixation with regime changes is not working. It's not working in Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Colombia, or Honduras. They have all elected left-wing socialist governments. Brazil should follow soon. On the other side, the Lima Group is now defunct. Ukraine is a total mess. The Africans and the Asians are rebuking us. They did so at the Commonwealth meeting, quite in our face. Our alliances in Europe are showing serious fissures. We've seen that with Germany, vis-a-vis the oil pipeline. Mexico, our partner in NAFTA, is going against the Canada-US foreign policy stance. The Mexicans, if you remember, refused to attend the meeting of the Organization of American States last June in protest of the US government's refusal to invite Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. This is our economic partner. We're tied in with the North American Free Trade Agreement. The tide, I believe, is turning in Venezuela's favor, slowly but surely. The Biden administration is making low-level overtures to President Maduro. We have seen it. Colombia has reestablished its diplomatic relations with Venezuela. The stalled talks between the opposition parties and the Maduro government appear to be gaining new life. And if the war in Ukraine drags on over the winter, it's likely that the US will take on more active tone of rapprochement with Venezuela. We may even see some tangible shifts in US policy after the congressional elections in November. The signs are all there. Bullying and belligerence in politics, as in real life, is very hard to sustain. So in the meantime, we need to keep doing what we have done for the last 18 months with these monthly pickets. Everything counts. Meeting a member of parliament, reaching out to a federal backbencher, to municipal and provincial politicians, even business leaders. Those who want the status quo are certainly doing it. They're definitely doing it. Trust me, I've seen it with my own eyes. You see it if you live in Ottawa. How are they doing it? Through think tanks, through well-paid political lobbyists. They have deep pockets. But most of all, in all of this, is that we need to keep offering our support and encouragement to the family of Alex Saab and to the people of Venezuela. They need to know that we know that despite our government's spin and messaging that the sanctions apply only to selected individuals, we know that it is always the most vulnerable who end up paying the heavy price. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bhagwant. That was a very excellent overview, and I think really appreciate the way that you also brought in the importance of everything that we do, the different aspects of the work that we should be doing more together in support of Venezuela and for freedom of Alex Saab, and the possibilities that definitely exist here in Canada. The monthly pickets have really been an established way to bring different groups and individuals together each month, but we also must commit to doing more actions in the streets and other types of activities. So thank you very much. It was perfectly timed and well appreciated perspective. So our next person that we have speaking tonight, let me just, she was a little bit in transit, so I want to make sure that she's still with us. Our camera is off. So IRMA, we can go ahead and watch two short videos I wanted to share, unless you are ready to go. Yes, we will go ahead and share a short video. I wanted to just give people a bit of a background about the case we talked about earlier, which was about what is happening with the Venezuelan gold being held in the Bank of England, and the importance of a campaign to demand that that gold be returned to the people of Venezuela and the democratically elected government of President Maduro. So I will queue up that video as IRMA gets ready to join us from where she is in Mexico.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros denounced this Wednesday the actions of looting and theft of assets of the country committed abroad. During a working day of the entrepreneurial engine, President Maduro sentenced as a part of the action the theft and kidnapping of the Venezuelan gold, currently held in the Bank of England. Likewise, the President of Venezuela denounced the claim of the United States to illegally appropriate a Venezuelan plane held in Argentina and that it played a fundamental role in the life and humanitarian attention of the country. In this context, the Venezuelan head of state assured that he will continue in the struggle for the recovery of all the wealth and the goods of the republic.
I think what we're seeing here is the mixing up of politics and the judiciary. I mean that the West has oftentimes used the legal system to promote its political agenda. It seems to me this has happened here again, and therefore, although you could argue that if the court says it's legal, then it is, I would strongly encourage the Venezuelan authorities to challenge this through appeal. Secondly, motive. What's the motive here? Well, the motive, I think, is the attempt to crush the existing Venezuelan government. And as you've pointed out, and as my colleague has pointed out, the democratically elected leadership of Maduro. You don't have to like a leader to respect democracy. But if you think about it the other way around, imagine if the Venezuelan government tried to bring down a British leader using financial sanctions because they did not like the British leader. I personally believe that this is an Anglo-American initiative primarily.
So that was just a bit of a background about the Venezuelan gold. The appeal that the commentator was speaking about did happen, and that is the appeal that was ruled on July 29th against the Venezuelan government. So the struggle does continue, and we definitely have to include that among our demands for the return of Venezuela's gold. IRMA is here with us and reconnected. So I want to welcome IRMA Sofía Nava. She is a leading organizer with Mexico Solidarity with Venezuela and a spokesperson for CONAICOP, which is the National and International Council of Popular Communication, an international organization founded in Venezuela. IRMA is a member of the Central Committee of the Popular Socialist Party of Mexico, and we've had the pleasure of meeting each other both in Venezuela to observe the presidential elections and also at the Tijuana Workers' Summit of the Americas, which took place in June of this year of 2022 in Tijuana, Mexico. It's great to see you again on video, IRMA, and please, the floor is yours.
Claro, gracias. Qué gusto, Ali.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to see you, Alison. Yes, this was in July in Tijuana where we met. This was one of the counter summits. One of the slogans was to condemn that summit that excluded revolutionary countries such as the Republic of Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela. So it's a pleasure for me to see you all. Thank you. One of the questions would be, why is it important to be in solidarity with Venezuela? Those who defend life has to be with Venezuela. Those who defend human rights have to be with Venezuela. And why is this? Because we have to clarify, these are not sanctions. Sanctions are imposed when a law is infringed. I'm not an expert, but I know that no laws have been infringed. This is why these are unilateral coercive measures. They affect the basic rights of the Venezuelan people by impeding trade relation with the world, by creating media cover so that the people don't know the truth about Venezuela. A government that created missions, housing missions, food missions that were able to give back basic rights to Venezuelan people. So this is why it's important to really raise our voices in any forum to defend the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people. And as you very well say, since I am in this group in solidarity with Venezuela, there are many groups of which the goal is to raise our voices and spread information about the Bolivarian process, to spread the voice about the Chavez struggle. And how do we do this? Through seminars, through workshops. In October, we will have our next one. I'm sorry, the connection is cut off. We will have our 12th seminar on the Bolivarian process soon. We have
Y de él cuente Ibar y
Irma, hay algunos problemas con la conexión.
Sí, ya regresé. Es que como se
I'm back. As you can see, I'm heading home. But it's important to be in solidarity. This is a genuine act to defend life, to defend Venezuela means to defend Latin America, not only Latin America, it's to defend Mexico as well, because if we allow the empire to continue attacking Venezuela, they will attack any other country soon. And we have seen coup d'etats in Bolivia, for example, and right now they are planning the kidnapping of this plane in Argentina. So if we allow them to do this, they will meddle somewhere else. They will meddle in all governments and internal politics. We know their history of meddling. Each time they go into a country, they create this military bases, they create poverty. This is why this is a situation that is key. This defending Venezuela is defending rights. We have been present in different events, but we have to be everywhere. We have to be on the streets, on the radio, on TV, anywhere we can, to tell the truth about the Venezuelan people. How this united people, the civil society and the military society is embracing their sovereignty, so that it is not clamped down. This is why we need to create networks. With our organization, we have issued statements, and we have always taken our message to all state agencies that we could. We have always pronounced ourselves in favor of Alex Saab. He has never committed any crimes. We see once again how the international law is being infringed here, and how the Cabo Verde government also became a lackey of the United States. Alex Saab is now unfortunately in Miami, and I'm sorry, I'm receiving some noises, but what we have to really shout, free Alex Saab. He never committed any crimes. He only helped his people, and the empire will never forgive him for creating a strategy to take food and medicine to his country. The empire doesn't forgive individuals or governments of satisfying their needs without asking for their permission. This is why we have to really shout free Alex Saab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irma. It's good to see you today, and thank you for talking to us. I know you're on your way home, but we really appreciate your time and to work together more between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. There's much more that we can do together to demand freedom for Alex Saab and to demand an end to sanctions on Venezuela. So please, when you have information about the conference taking place in Mexico, share it, and we will support as best we can from here in Canada and the United States. Free Alex Saab and no to sanctions on Venezuela. Thank you. So our next speaker We were hoping to be able to connect with Wilfredo Perez Bianco. Wilfredo was the former Consul General of the Venezuelan consulate here in Vancouver, where I am based, when one existed. That consulate no longer exists. We've talked and in understanding of a breakdown in relations between the government of Canada and the government of Venezuela. It was no longer possible for the consulate to operate, and the government of Canada continues to make it difficult for the embassy to operate as well. So Wilfredo, unfortunately, his internet connection is not working well enough to join us here today, but I do want to share a recent article that he wrote about the impact of sanctions in Venezuela, and encourage people to read it and share it. It is in Spanish, but it's most internet browsers make it quite easy to translate today, and encourage people to share with others. And hopefully Wilfredo will be able to join us next month. I know many of us were looking forward to connecting with him. But we do have with us here today our dear Professor Luis Acuna, a strong fighter for Venezuela and someone that is always joined us here on these monthly picket actions. Professor Luis Acuna is the charge d'affaires of the Venezuelan embassy in Canada, continues to speak to us and do his work under difficult conditions from in Venezuela because of the hostility from the government of Canada towards the democratically elected government of Venezuela, which he represents and works for. We very much appreciate Luis joining us every month to give us an update about his work in Venezuela, and let us know more about how we can support the people of Venezuela as we organize against sanctions attacks and for freedom for Alex Saab. So Luis, I know the internet connection also might be not very strong where you are, but let's go ahead and try it. And please welcome Professor Luis Acuna.
Yeah. Hello, Alison. Thanks very much for this invitation to this 18th in a row webinar in behalf of the Venezuelan people, in behalf of the freedom of Alex Saab. Very important things have been said today, which we should be talking about, but I mean, because the short time, I only will touch some of them. First one is about Alex Saab. We will keep working in the legal situation of Alex Saab. Alex Saab is not the criminal that we want to exchange by another criminal. Alex Saab is a man who is, who has done very, very good things for Venezuela. He's a diplomat who has been kidnapped by the US, and we want Alex Saab free because he is innocent. If the government of the United States put on the table to exchange Alex Saab, we will consider that. I mean, the government of the Presidente Maduro will consider that. But we want Alex Saab free because he is an innocent man. And that's why we will keep working on the legal situation of Alex Saab. The government keeps working on that. There are many organizations who works on that procedures. We have solidarity groups all around the world, and everyone understands that Alex Saab is an innocent man who deserves to be free by the US. I understand it is a political situation, of course. It's not a legal situation, but we want to make sure that the legal situation of Alex Saab is that he is an innocent man. And we will keep working on that all the time we need. Regarding the sanctions and this very important video you put today on screen, you can see how hard the sanctions have been on Venezuelan people. One thing that was not said on that video is that the many people who went out, many of our young people who went to Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, walking many of them, is because the sanction closed all the industry set up in Venezuela, and there were no places where to work. People didn't have a place where to work. The skills of people were not able to be developed in Venezuela, and they went out. Many of them found work outside. And now many of them are trying to come back because we are sure that once we go through this situation and we were able, if we are able to set up again the industrial park of Venezuela, many of those skilled people will come back because they want to be in Venezuela. They are out of Venezuela because they need to feed their family, and here there were no places where to work. So that migration that we had of Venezuelans, we hope that we are able to return many of those Venezuelans to here to work in Venezuela. The sanctions are today as alive as they were 1 year ago. The only thing that helps is that we were able to set up new systems. For example, 2 or 3 years ago, we imported all the food we had, we need for our people. Today, we are producing in Venezuela much of the food that we need. And that's a good consequence of the sanctions. We were forced to produce the food that we need. And that's why things have been improved a little bit. And also, many of the Venezuelans who in the past year put their money out of Venezuela are bringing their money into Venezuela. And today you can find in any place anything you need. Here the supplies of food, the supplies of many things are, better than 2 years ago. Of course, the Venezuelans are not earning enough money to buy those things that they put in the stores. Only a few people can afford to go to the store to buy the things they need. So the sanctions are still working very hard on Venezuela. We have improved the salaries of the workers, but not at the level they want and not at the level we think we should improve. We will need to have a better production of cash in Venezuela in order to do that. And mainly that will happen if we are able to put the oil industry to work better than what is working today. So we might in next month, in a few months, to improve the salaries of the workers. Regarding Canada, Canada is keeping the sanctions as hard as they were in 2017. Canada has been very, very hostile with Venezuela. I will say more hostile than the US. As a matter of fact, Canada was the only country in the world that was able to not permitting that the Venezuelan vote in the elections of 2018 to elect Presidente Maduro. That was a very, very harsh situation. I mean, Canada was able to get into the internal affairs of Venezuela. They forbidden the Venezuelans to vote in Canada. We were not able to set up the booth for vote in the embassy in Ottawa. That was the only, at that moment, we have opened Ottawa and the embassy. We have opened the consulate in Toronto. We have opened the consulate in Montreal, and also the consulate in Vancouver, which we had to close because Canada decided not to renew the visas of the consuls. What can we do in Vancouver not having any consul there? Nothing. So we were forced by Canada to close temporarily the consulate of Vancouver, and we are ready to open it. As a matter of fact, we asked Canada in this past month, in a mail that I sent, we asked Canada to allow the accreditation of a diplomat in Ottawa and a diplomat in Vancouver, because Vancouver is so far from Ottawa that we need to have like another embassy in Vancouver to help the Venezuelans who live in the West Coast. But Canada has been, close eyes, and Canada doesn't hear any of those things that we ask them, because we need to help the Venezuelans in Canada, but we don't have the way to help them because we don't have a diplomat. We cannot work most of the consular actions that we need. If a Venezuelan is born in Canada at this moment, there is no way to have a birth certificate for that boy or for that girl. And that is very, very hard situation for the Venezuelans. For us, it's very important that finally we were able, with the new president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, to recover monomeros. As you know, Venezuela was depleted from many of their assets. You said that goal in England that they want to steal. They want to steal that goal. Okay. It's 2 billion. But all the things that we have seized around the world is more than 5 billion. And that includes Citgo, that is the company, the very important company we have in the US. We hope that as we recover monomeros, we will recover Citgo too. We don't think that, that things happen. And we hope that Canada at the moment will reconsider his position regarding Venezuela. The position of Canada regarding Venezuela has been very hostile. Canada has been the one who set up the Lima Group, the one who supported the Lima Group, the one who still supports the ambassador and all the representation of Juan Guaido in Canada, and does not recognize any of the anything that is close to Presidente Maduro. For example, at this moment, we just named the permanent representative of Venezuela in the International Organization of Civil Aviation. That is a very important organization that is hosted by Montreal in Canada. and we has not been able to get a visa for that the permanent representative. So Venezuela has that person name, and is not able that that person goes to Canada to do the things that should be doing for Venezuela. We have been, talking, and we only have one channel of connection with Canada, just one. That is not exactly global affairs. It's what they call the task force of global affairs. But there is no way that Canada can hear our what we are asking to Canada in order for Venezuela to work properly with the Venezuelan we have there. We want to thank IRMA SOFÍA NAVA, LILIAM MENDEZ, and BHAGWANT SANDHU for their participation tonight. You are, and you, of course, Alison, you are our voice in Canada, and you are our voice in the world. And what you are able to do in this webinar goes to many places. So we really appreciate this webinar. We really appreciate the people who talk every month here. And we really appreciate the solidarity that you offer to Venezuelans in their struggle to go to normality, because we will. If you look at what have been doing in this, from your first webinar to this 18th one, in the first one, we were much worse than what we are today. And we hope that we will keep improving. And finally, Venezuela goes to normality once we are able to go through all this situation. As BHAGWANT Sandhu said, we hope that after the midterm elections, things may change. But let's wait. I know that the President Biden is aware that taking an action in favor of Venezuela will mean losing some voters of their party. So they want to be very careful with what they are doing. Thanks very much, Alison. We are ready to keep fighting in Venezuela and ready to participate to inform anything people want. Any question, please, I am ready to answer at my level. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Luis Acuna, the Charge d'Affaires of the Venezuelan Embassy in Canada. Very important to have those updates from you about US or Venezuela-Canada relations, and also thank you for your reports from on the ground in Venezuela and for spending your evening with us every month. The virtual picket actions are organized by the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg, the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, Just Peace Advocates, with the support of Venezuela solidarity organizations and individuals across Canada. And I think you are very correct in saying that throughout all 18 pickets, the breadth of people we've been able to reach, the variety of speakers and perspectives have been very valuable to building the base that we need to build a more united and stronger movement for Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination from here in Canada. So thank you very much for your perspective and always being together with us. We are going to start getting ready for our group photo, which we take together at the end of every picket. But before that, there are some folks here that I want to invite to join us and give greetings from where they are and organizations that they represent. If anyone else is here from a group in Canada that would like to give greetings, if you want to raise your hand, I can promote you in the chat. And if folks want to get ready to find their signs or just ready to turn on their cameras, we'll do our group photo in just a few minutes here. I have upgraded, I believe, Mary Carmen Guevara and Janine Solanke. If you could accept the upgrade. I think we've got it now. And I think Mary Carmen's also in the possibility of joining us. And then Nino Paglicia also. 1 second. Okay, Mary Carmen, oh, beautiful background. If you would like to start, Mary Carmen Guevara is joining us from Ottawa, Canada.
Greeting from Ottawa, Alba Social Movements from Ottawa, Canada. Thank you, Alison, and thank you, people in Vancouver, for continue doing this. Picket is really important. It was wonderful to see Professor Acuña. We really miss him here in Ottawa. And tonight, we were planning to have an event for Cuba, raising money for Matanza. And I want to mention that we are so grateful with Venezuela, because Venezuela is helping Cuba, and that's make us encourage us more to support Venezuela, because Venezuela is our brothers, our sisters are working for the same cause, to be solidarity with each other. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you guys, and I will see you soon. Viva Venezuela, amo Venezuela.
Viva
Ciao.
Venezuela. Thank you, Mary Carmen Guevara. Mary Carmen is a organizer with Alba Movimientos in Ottawa, Canada, as well as Ottawa Cuba Connections, and a strong supporter always of the people of Venezuela and against US sanctions. It's great to have your support and to see you here today, doing good work to raise funds that Cuba needs in order to especially recover from this latest disaster of the tank farm, the diesel fire. So go back to your hard work, and thank you for your time with us here tonight, Mary Carmen. Next, I have Nino Paglicia. Nino is here with the Hugo Chavez People's Defense Front here in Vancouver.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here, and thank you, Alison, for organizing and for the introductions. I could spend some time just greeting all the nice people that I've heard, and in particular, I have to say a special un abrazo bolivariano a Professor Luis Acuña. I missed very much the presence of Wilfredo, and of course, my dear friend Irma, desde México, un abrazo muy fuerte. But I want to give my major greetings to all participants, especially my compatriots from Venezuela. I think this is a perfect setting that has been presented tonight. And I think for me, the highlight has been the video, the Venezuela analysis video on sanctions. Sanctions is the crucial, very important topic that we all need to understand. We all need to grasp it. Yes, we want Alex Saab free, and we'll continue fighting for that. But unless we understand the ramifications of the sanctions, US sanctions against Venezuela, against many countries in the world, there are about 40 countries who are being sanctioned by the US. Unless we understand that, I think we lag behind. So we will continue our fight to free Alex Saab. I just want to make a reference, a quick reference to a new sort of example, if you wish, of the US sanctions. And this is the airplane, the Boeing 747 that has been now grounded in Argentina since June the 6th, I believe. Now, there has been a long struggle happening in Argentina, but just lately, on July the 19th, the Department of Justice, the US Department of Justice, presented a request to confiscate the Boeing 747. And what they argue in order to do that is because this plane was violating the sanctions, the US sanctions, and the laws that controls exports. And this is because the plane has been acquired by Venezuela, Conviasa, from Iran, okay? So now this is just an example of the tremendous ramification of the sanctions that US imposes. So this is a new campaign that I would encourage everyone to start following. I think Venezuela has a great interest in pursuing the freedom, the release of this Boeing 747 to Venezuela. It's Venezuelan property. So again, never feel that we have too many campaigns because I think if we keep the focus on the ultimate goal, which is the sanctions, the ultimate goal is to really destroy, to really make sanctions obsolete. I think we have a mission: anti-imperialism, done with sanctions, free Alex Saab, free the Boeing 747, and let's be all united on this. Thank you very much. Greetings to all.
Thank you, Nino Paglicia from the Hugo Chavez People's Defense Front in Vancouver. Something I think important about the Boeing airplane that adds to the urgency of that campaign is President Maduro mentioned that it being held in Argentina prevented the speed at which Venezuela could properly respond to the tank fires in Cuba. He said it's a large cargo plane. If Venezuela had it, it could have been used to transport the much needed materials and firefighters. But it is another criminal act by the United States government to order the detention of Venezuela's property and their airplane. So thank you. Next, I wanted to invite Janine Solanki. Janine is here from Mobilization Against War and Occupation, Anti-War Coalition here in Vancouver as well.
Hello, good afternoon, evening to everyone. On behalf of Mobilization Against War and Occupation, thank you to all the organizers for bringing us together in defense of our Venezuelan sisters and brothers, and to the excellent speakers that were part of today's event. The US government is attempting to dominate Venezuela, and we know that's because they want to stop the threat of a good example, to not allow a country to be independent, whose priority is the interests of its people instead of profit. And they know that the example of Venezuela, as well as Cuba, is an inspiration to people around the world, as us here on this call very well know. The US war drive to gain hegemony is something facing countries throughout Latin America and throughout the decades, really, also in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, and really in all oppressed nations all around the world, with their vicious and brutal wars and occupations, with military interventions or covert operations, as Venezuela knows very well, by orchestrating coups, which have failed in Venezuela, and also sanctions and blockades, as our speakers have spoken about. While these actions from the US government have made life very difficult for the Venezuelan people and have been devastating for the Venezuelan economy, the US has failed fundamentally because the strength of Venezuela's Bolivarian revolution and the resolve of the Venezuelan people to remain sovereign despite these US actions. But as Allison was just saying, This affects Venezuela. This also affects other people around the world who are fighting for their self-determination, as Venezuela is not able to help Cuba as much as they would like to, such as with the tank fire recently, because of the US actions against Venezuela. In mobilization against war and occupation here in Vancouver, Canada, we demand self-determination for all oppressed nations, whether it be in Yemen, Palestine, indigenous nations, Cuba, and as we're all here today, for Venezuela. We are joining with you all in demanding end the US-Canada sanctions on Venezuela, lift the blockade, and hands off Venezuela. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Janine Solanki. I also saw that perhaps Daniel Niebert from the Hamilton Coalition Against to Stop the War would like to say a few words. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, my video is on the blink, so I don't have a photo representation to share with you, but thanks for the introduction. As you are right, I am on the executive of the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War, located in the so-called Golden Horseshoe area of Ontario, Canada. We just want to convey that the Hamilton Coalition is 110% behind efforts not only in Canada but around the world to stop and discontinue these inhumane sanctions against a duly elected government in South America. It's a travesty that this goes on, and we are committed to do what we can to support the efforts. Additionally, not a surprise to anyone, but Alex Saab is a hero. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. He's a hero. He's put himself in jeopardy, trying to feed and provide vaccines, et cetera, for the population of the wonderful country of Venezuela. So he is to be commended and congratulated, and most importantly, he needs to be exonerated. He has done no wrong whatsoever other than caring for his fellow citizens. And we are, as I said earlier, we are 110% behind doing everything possible to free him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is very true, both in the case of the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War, mobilization against war and occupation, that standing for Venezuela and demanding freedom for Alex Saab is very much an anti-war issue and important for the anti-war and peace movement in Canada to take up. So I appreciate you being here, Daniel, from the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War, to bring that statement and those greetings. So that marks the end of our greetings section of the picket. I'm going to begin promoting people to become panelists. So what that means is you will get a notification on your screen asking if you would like to be upgraded. If you agree to that notification, you will be able to join into the full section of our webinar here tonight. You will be able to turn on your camera and participate in the group photo. In about 2 minutes here, I will also turn off the interpretation so that we can give a big thank you to Julieta and to Anna for their very diligent and hard work interpreting tonight's event. It is never easy. All of us talk too fast, and we really apologize for that. The format, I know, is also very dynamic. So I appreciate, of course, your flexibility and enabling us to have a truly bilingual event. It's so important. I am continuing to send out the invitations to promote people to panelists. I'll give it a few more minutes, and then everyone, I'll let you know before we take the photo. So don't worry too much about smiling yet. But it is great to see you all here tonight. We will have, of course, the 19th monthly picket action. You can put it down in your calendars for the month of September. It will be taking place. I'll tell you the date in 1 second. My computer is slightly frozen with all of this activity, so give it 1 second. So the next picket action will be on Thursday, September 15th Put it in your calendars, and it will be great to see you all here again in the virtual Zoom space for our online Picket. There are people here from the United States, from Senegal, from across Latin America, from Venezuela, of course. Thank you to our Venezuelan brothers and sisters for joining us here today. And thank you again to our speakers, to BHAGWANT SANDHU, who joined us from Ottawa, Canada, to IRMA, who joined us from Mexico, to Professor Luis Acuña, who joined us from Venezuela, and of course to LILIAM, who is joining us from Venezuela directly as well. If you have not received an invitation to be a panelist, I can resend it. Raise your hand in the Zoom and I will resend you the panelist link. Otherwise, everyone, I believe, should have received an invitation. Don't worry, I will let you know before we take the photo so we can all chat together. Demand freedom for Alex Saab. There are going to be more court dates coming up for Alex Saab, so I encourage people to be prepared to support campaigns for his freedom in person and online. Sean O'Donoghue was here from the ad hoc committee to free Alex Saab in Quebec. Thank you for joining us, Sean. I think we are going to head. Oh, Brady, I think you should have gotten one now. Do one more round. You can never get enough. Again, if you get an invitation, you just have to accept it on your screen. And once you do that, you'll be able to turn on your camera and join us for the photo. Okay. I'm going to disable interpretation. Okay, everyone. Interpretation is now disabled. No hay más interpretación y puedes abrir su micrófono si quieres. Vamos a gritar juntos y juntas. We're going to chant together, so you should be able to unmute your microphone if you would like. And together we will say, free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
No to sanctions on Venezuela.
No sanctions on Venezuela.
And sanctions.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Lift all sanctions.
Lift all sanctions.
Free Alex Saab.
Lift all sanctions.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Venceremos.
Venceremos. We will win. We will see you all next month on September 15th. Put it in your calendars. Same time, same place here on Zoom. And we will once again unite our voices from across Canada and around the United States and around the world against criminal sanctions on Venezuela. Demand freedom for Alex Saab, the release of the Boeing airplane held in Argentina, a release of to all sanctions. Thank you all. Venceremos, we will win. Again, big thank you to Julieta and Anna for your participation. Free Alex Saab. Libre Alex Saab. Fuera de Venezuela. Good night.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex.